Welcome, Alice Graves, to Coaching in Session. How are you doing today?
I am very good. Thank you so much for having me on your show today.
Of course. So today I have you on as a life coach extraordinaire. And I know life coach can be one of those terms, like if you just think of like Tony Robbins, we think of maybe people who are just helping people with their life. But when it comes to life coaching, it's so much more. But in your own words, can you define the work you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Life coaching is so broad. So for me, right now, I really focus on working with successful women who still doubt themselves. So there are so many women out there who are achieving so much in the world, and yet they're still riddled with self-doubt. And that could be in their work, it could be in their home life, in their relationships, even in their own thoughts. And for me, I really focus on working with these women so they can move from a place of living in self-doubt to a place of really recognizing their achievements and recognizing their success and moving into a place of confidence, because in that place of confidence, there's stability and there's ease. And that's really the work that I focus on. It's something I'm so passionate about. And also just, I find it a fascinating subject, confidence. I think something so many people want, but no one really knows what it is. So in a nutshell, that's what I do.
And where would you say this self-doubt comes from, where it stems from?
That's a very, very good question. And it's quite a complex answer. So research actually suggests that somewhere between 25 and 50% of your confidence actually is in your genetics. So it comes from your hormones like serotonin, cortisol, oxytocin. That mix of hormones actually can create confidence. And that can be genetic, but that's 25 to 50%. And the rest is really down to nurture. It could really be stemming from experiences that you've had in your life. I think for a lot of us, we lose a sense of who we are. When you see children, they know exactly who they are. You ask them a question, they answer. There's no scanning, there's no thinking. It's just, this is the answer. This is who I am. And as you grow older, you start to experience things in your life that cause you pain. Maybe you're singing one day and someone takes the mick out of you and you think, oh, that hurt. I'll never do that again. And you start to hide parts of who you are. And what I've really seen in the work I've done is when you lose a sense of who you are, it creates self-doubt, because suddenly you're living a life that isn't really aligned with your values. It isn't really aligned with what makes you happy and what sparks you with joy. You're just kind of following what everyone else does. And when it doesn't give you that feeling of fulfillment, you doubt yourself. And then, of course, on top of that, there's a lot of complexities, especially with women, with society and how we're raised, and that we're sort of playing a game and the rules keep on changing for us and we're judged on very different things. So it's a real sort of colorful complexity of what creates self-doubt. But those are the main themes. It's genetics, it's losing a sense of yourself, and it's also how society can box you in certain roles.
You said something interesting. You said we lose ourselves, but there's also maybe another component to that. Maybe we never even find out who we are. So maybe we are just like going along with what our parents say, going along with what our friends say, our teachers say, and we never truly take some time to figure out who we are, to become confident in who we are. Do you think that's another component to self-doubt?
Yeah, I love that actually. It's true, because as you grow, part of growing is finding yourself. And no one is born, I suppose, knowing exactly who they are. It's all about your experiences. So maybe that is part of it, that we never truly discover what we are. And it starts from such a young age. Like I have small children and I see it already, that they're going to school and they have to perform in a certain way and things are expected of them. And I'm very conscious what I say to my children. So I try to encourage them just to be them. But absolutely, I think for a lot of us, we don't really ever find out who we are. Or if we maybe do know who we are, we lose that because we are just trying to fit the mold of everyone else's expectations. And that's definitely a place that I've been in my life. And it's a very confusing place to be. And when you're confused, you're not confident because you're confused and you're questioning everything that's going on around you and also within you.
Confidence was something that I didn't have until maybe I was in high school. So all of my elementary school years, I was just kind of pushing through to make it. And I wasn't the best English subject person. I was good at math. I wasn't good at English or science or history. I just didn't know how to learn. If you know anything about education, there's a way you can learn and you should know the way you learn. So I'm a visual learner, but I was never really interested in school. So I would go to school and I would daydream. about being
Mm.
home and playing video games and playing outside and riding my bike and going to the park. It wasn't about school or education. So it was difficult for me because I wouldn't get the grades. I would get D's and F's and some C's and things like that. And once in a while, get a B. And I'm like, yeah, I got a B. That right there, getting those grades, it kind of lowered my self confidence at that time. And then going home and then having my parents, they're like, why are you not getting good grades? And this is like, well, what do I say? I'm a kid. I
Yeah.
don't know how to explain to them that I don't know what I'm doing in school. I mean, I'm going to school, I'm learning things, but it's not at the level I need to be on grade level. And it
Mm.
wasn't until I finally opened up, I think in around fourth grade, I really started to appreciate school, appreciate learning. And then that's when the confidence started to build. I know in sixth grade, I was in advanced algebra. So it was a slow incline for me to finally get to that confidence. I know because I was a teacher for several years before I left and started my coaching career, where a lot of these students, they're riddled with all of these standardized tests, all these assessments, and all of them drop their courage because they don't know how they did. Because assessments are, we just want to see where you are, but we never really show them, oh, this is where you are. And
Yeah.
so they might think, well, I did bad. And as long as they think that, then that is what it is. I remember one student, he knew he did bad because he just guessed on everything. He just said, I'm not going to do this. So he guessed on everything. And his demeanor for that whole entire school year was, yeah, school's dumb. I'm not going to be anything. That lack of self confidence stems from such an early age, and it kind
Yeah.
of trickles into our adulthood.
Yeah.
If you were speaking to someone who had an experience like that, their elementary school days, and maybe even in high school, they still couldn't become confident, what would be maybe the first step that you would go to remediate this, to help them look back at their past and maybe go through that to help them now live in the future and say the past is
Mm.
the past, and then we can be confident today?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you just said so many powerful things there. And I think the biggest thing, and obviously you being a mindset coach, you know this, it's your mindset. And that's where it's all in your mind. It's all about reframing. So I do quite a lot of NLP coaching. And a big part of that is reframing. And that is about going into your past and looking at those experiences and thinking, well, what else could it mean? Because we have an experience and then we create the narrative. So our narrative and our memory could be very different to actually what happens. So the example you give, someone does a test, they do badly, their story, their narrative, I'm stupid. I'm stupid. I can't learn. I really struggle. That is what you're constantly telling yourself. And again, research has been done on this, that the effect, if you tell someone like, you're not good at this, you won't do well in a test, it will directly impact the results they have. Whereas if you tell someone like, you've got this, you're amazing, and you really have them believe it, the increase in the results, it's huge. And this is, scientific research they've done on this. So the mindset is everything. So for me, I would take someone through the experience of reframing the narrative they're giving that. And then I would really work with them on their mindset. So they stop telling that story that I'm not good enough. And
Mhm.
also separating this obsession with results and who you are as a person, because you're much more than a grade on a piece of paper. That doesn't define who you are. So again, it's going back to, who are you? What's important to you? Finding out what your strengths are and focusing on them. So maybe that's more than one step, but those are a few of the steps that I would go through. And there's
Mhm.
this really great book I would recommend everyone to read called The Chimp Paradox. There's a bit in the book where the research talks about, the perfect example of creating self-confidence with sort of test results is a child comes home and they've done this beautiful picture at school. And the first thing the parent does is see the picture and say, oh my God, this is so amazing. And then they say to the child, we love you so much, which is what most parents would do. But what you're teaching your child is they're so amazing because they did an amazing picture. Whereas
Mhm.
actually the better thing to do is that the child comes home, they say, hey, look, I've done this picture. And you say, hold on 1 second, put the picture to the side, give the child a big hug, tell them they're amazing, that you love them so much. And then you say, let's have a look at the picture. And when I heard that in the book, I thought, wow, yeah, it is. ripping apart this attachment we have with our results, our tests, what we've done, and how we feel about ourselves.
And then that kind of goes into the peer acceptance type of thing, that we look for that validation in people, from people, and we don't care how we get it. So if we have to be negative and we get negative attention, still attention. If we get positive attention and we seek attention, it doesn't matter what type of attention we get, as long as we're being paid attention to. And when I was teaching, again, I would call students who sought the negative attention, I would call them heavy hitters, because they would always give you a run for your money. So you would go in the class, you don't know what you're going to get that day. Are they in a good mood? What type of attention? And it's not so much that they're generally bad kids. It's just that at home, they might not get the attention that they want. So maybe it's a single parent household. They don't have maybe mom or dad. So the parents doing the best they can. And especially if they have siblings, they're having to juggle everyone. They're going to school and they're just seeking attention.
Yeah.
And even if they brought that picture home to mom or dad, yeah, they might not even be able to separate, even if they said, you're amazing, because they still want the attention when they want it. It's almost like that immediate gratification that
Yeah.
we have kind of fallen into. Sometimes when I see new people or new clients, they have this maybe a more negative way of thinking, right? So they're a little bit more pessimistic. They might not believe coaching can help. They're like, I don't think this is going to work. It's so interesting because always after the first call, they always say, oh, that's better than I thought it would be. Versus, oh, this is not going to work after the call or whatever it is. They have to be open to it. And sometimes people are not even willing to create change in their life. That's one of the most important things I think someone has to be willing for when they start coaching, is change. Even when I, going back to maybe my story of how I became a coach and fell into this role, was I had to change. I was a person who was going down a path that I thought was what I would want in my life. Lo and behold, if I kept going down that path, the only thing I would have found at the end was sadness and despair. Yeah, I would have had money. Yeah, maybe I would have had friends, but I wouldn't have joy. I wouldn't have fulfillment. I wouldn't have happiness. I know there's a journey in every single person. And if you can share your journey of how you kind of fell into the role of becoming a life coach and helping people.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, what you said is so spot on. Like, you have to want to change, and it's tough, and change is really scary. Most people think they really want to change and they're up for it, but change is really scary. Fear of success is just as big as fear of failure, and change means going into the unknown. So for me, I've actually always really been interested in coaching. Even when I was a teenager, I remember seeing a life coach because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do at one stage of my life. And I actually started my career wanting to be an actress. And that's what I did. And that's what I studied. And I did a bit of that. And when that all fell apart, I went into the corporate world and did recruitment, because if you don't know what to do, you go to do recruitment. And I really enjoyed it, but I just always felt a bit out of place. And I would see people around me who were so driven and so interested. And I would wonder, are they kind of faking it? Like, are they really that interested in climbing the corporate ladder? And I still had a lot of self-doubt in myself, even though I come across as someone who's so confident, because again, confidence, a lot of the time people look it, but they're not. And so I went and saw a coach, and it just changed everything for me. And seeing this particular coach really understanding who I am, understanding what makes me tick. It didn't change everything, but it made me think, okay, I get it. Oh, that makes sense. And like, even though coaching is very much about focusing on the future, you do touch on the past. And there were some past traumas that, I was still holding on to. And I didn't even know I was holding on to them, and just releasing all of that. And after doing that, my career really advanced a lot better, a lot quicker, a lot more smoothly. And I knew I had always wanted to have my own business. And I was already coaching people pretty much a lot throughout my career. And then I had my second child, and I thought, this is it. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to show other women that they're just amazing, because it took me a long time to sort of, I hate saying this because it's so kind of cliche, but to step into my power. It really did take me a long time to be like, I don't have to apologize for who I am. Don't have to apologize for being talkative or for being loud or for being outgoing. This is who I am. And when I had that, it changed everything in my life. And so I thought, this is what I want to do. I want to help other people experience this. And that was, a year and a half ago. So I've been doing that since then, and it's amazing.
I know you primarily work with women. I know that's your forte. But when we get into that way of like empowerment, right? Like, I want to empower myself. Do you think that's more of a way of thinking for women rather than men? Because when I speak with men who are trying to get their life in order, it's not about empowerment, it's about getting their life on track. Maybe comparing, like, I'm not sure your variety in working with men and women. I'm sure you have worked with men in your past. But looking at the two, what would be maybe some of the factors that you work with men, and then some factors that you work with primarily with women?
Yes, so I do have male clients as well. So primarily I work with women, but absolutely, I think, as you know, as a coach, if you're a good coach, you can coach anyone. And I think a lot of the time, what we're looking for is the same. It's just we word it differently. I think women feel they're really looking for this confidence. But really, what is confidence? It's just having faith in your ability and having the courage to do what you want to do. And the men have the same. So a lot of the men I have worked with, they're at a point in their career where they know they want to do something different. Maybe they've had a bit of a side gig going on and they're like, is now the time? I feel like there's something more to me and to my life. So they might not be using the word confidence, but ultimately it's still stepping up and doing what it is you really want to do and feeling that's the right decision. So often that's what the word they might use is like, I'm looking, what's the right decision for me right now? Is this what I should be doing? So I feel what they're looking for is the same. It's just we connect with different words, especially with what's going on in the world right now. I think with, female and leadership and confidence, those are the words that we hear a lot. And men, that's not something we ever hear, that men need more confidence. So I don't think it's top of mind, but I do feel what they're looking for. I think what we're all looking for is the same thing: to feel settled, to feel aligned, to not be questioning everything we're doing, and to ultimately be content.
Yeah, no, just the word empower, right? Just that word in my head. When I think about it, it's like, well, you didn't have power in my head, but you do have power. You always had the power, similar to how you can make the change in your life for whatever you want. You could be whatever you want to be, especially here in America. If you want to be a CEO, you can be a CEO. You could be a boss babe. You can do that. You can have a family. You could be the protector and the provider. You could do all of that. But to give yourself the idea that you have to empower yourself or you have to level up, it's kind of like we're operating from a sense of scarcity already from the beginning.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, where does that sense of scarcity comes into play that we feel, or that primarily I'm just going to target women here, not to target you or anything, but that they feel that they have to be empowered when they already have that power within them. What in society is showing women that they are not empowered already?
Really good question. I think a lot of it stems a bit back to, you could say, our animal brain, that there is a fear of standing out. If you go back to, like, really the brain's function is to keep us safe. For women, that doesn't necessarily mean putting yourself out there, because that's a dangerous place to be. You want to fit in. You want to fit in the herd, because to be alone, that's a very dangerous place. And now we have to overcome that, because we're not living in the desert anymore. We're in houses and with internet. But that function of the brain, it's still there. It's still very strong. And so I think there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear of judgment. There's, a lot of people, it's, if I do this, what will people think of me? And I think that's a big part of it. And social media, I think, definitely doesn't help, because there's so much judgment thrown around. And also the idea that you do have to do it all. It almost seems wrong if you would say, well, actually, I'm just happy getting to this level and then calling it a day. Again, it's this constant, I feel, comparison that, well, they're doing that, so I have to do that and I have to one up them. And it's like, well, no, go back to you and what you want, because there are sacrifices. I'm a mum, I run a business. It's hard. There are sacrifices I have to make. You can't necessarily do everything exactly how you would want to do it. And I think, again, that plays into it, because we're told you can have it all, you can do it all. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but yes, you can, but there are sacrifices you have to be willing to make. So again, I think, a bit of a complex answer, but I think that all plays into the idea. But you're right, we do have the power in us. It's allowing ourselves to believe it and allowing ourselves to take up space, when I think for a long time, women have also been told, you're too loud, you're too much, just pipe down. So it's making that shift and being okay that some people might judge you. Well, okay, whatever, they can judge me.
Yeah, no, I love what you said. when someone decides to be loud and to not tiptoe anymore, that's like spreading of your wings and finally saying, okay, I'm going to be free and I'm going to fly. And I encourage anyone who has that way of thinking, that mindset, to do it,
Mm.
where it's not that you're being modern or you're not being traditional. It's just that that's what you want, right? That's the
Yeah.
flavor of ice cream that's your favorite.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine. Society is going to label you regardless. Whether you're a good mom or you're a bad mom, you have been labeled. Whether you're a good wife or you're a bad wife, you have been labeled. We have to not compare ourselves to what other people are doing, where it's like, oh, well, Stacy next door, she's a wonderful wife. She stays home with the kids and she takes them to soccer practice and all of these wonderful things that a mom does. But in reality, the dad could stay home and the mom can go out and make the bread. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that it has to not be what society is saying, oh, this is
Yeah.
wrong. And when we get
Absolutely.
into the comparison way of thinking, I think that's where many of the differences come between men and women, because we are, in the sense, not equal in the terms of biology. For example,
Mhm.
I can't have a kid.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine, right? But in the sense of what we are able to accomplish with our mindset, how powerful can our mindset be? Not even looking at skill and body, just looking at how powerful can our mind be, how much knowledge and how much wisdom we can inlay in ourselves and into the world. That is limitless within
Mhm.
any person. There's no sex there. So that's
Yeah.
why I enjoy mindset so much, because you can give someone all the abundance they need to grow and they can go as far as they want to.
Yeah.
Now, you might say you can go more, but if they don't want to go more, then there's
Yes.
nothing you can do. So when someone gets to that point where they're like, oh, I'm just going to accept this. This is my life. Or they look at their circumstances, or maybe they look at their parents or they look at their friends and they say, well, I'm better than them. That's the comparison mindset going again, because you're saying, well, you're like your parents, you're like your friends, you're like whoever. But why not choose your own path, your own
Oh,
destiny? And I
yeah.
think that's where many people get stuck. They get stuck in this comparison way of thinking. They get stuck in this way of society, and they get stuck in this way of, I am already limited. I have a
Yeah.
scarcity mindset. I have to empower myself when they already have the power. They just have to realize. And
Mm.
it's that awareness. I think awareness is one of the most critical steps in coaching. For me, I say it a little bit different. I don't use the word awareness with my clients. I say, we have to first figure out where we are so we can figure out where we want to be. And that's awareness.
Yeah.
Look at your surroundings and then starting to make the change. And when someone comes to you and they are totally unaware, they're oblivious to the fact that they have that power, what is something that you say that might change their whole entire perspective around?
I'll be very honest, there's not really something I say because it's individual to every client. It's more of giving them a different way to look at things. That just stems from asking questions no one else is asking, because you're absolutely right. We grow up, we see what we see around us, and we believe this is all we're worthy of, or this is all we can have. And the big thing about coaching, it's to take someone who has tunnel vision and all they can see is this, and to go, whew, and suddenly they're like, wow. And the biggest response I often get from my clients is like, I never thought of it that way. And they leave feeling, I have so many options. Whereas often when they enter a session, it's like, this is all I can see. And it's asking the questions that suddenly they're like, I feel there are so many different ways I can go. So that's what I find is the most powerful thing in coaching. And I just really wanted to say on what you were saying about comparison. I just love that so much, because I also feel this comparison game, it robs you of happiness, because you'll never, ever be happy if you're always comparing. And also you're comparing to people whose life maybe you don't even want, but you're so conditioned to see like, oh, but they got this better job, or they got more money. I want that. And I had that in my corporate job where everyone's climbing the ladder. And I thought, I have to do it as well. And this is why so many people are unfulfilled, because they are comparing themselves to someone else. But that's not the life you want. And that's why it goes back to finding out what's important to you. And sometimes that also means taking yourself into a sort of a different lifestyle, surrounding yourself with different people who support who you really are, rather than getting wrapped up, in what everyone else is doing and just sort of going with the flow.
One of the things you might hear from motivational speeches or from books, find your why, find your purpose, your passion, your gift. When I was going through college, I started off in accounting, business, finance. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to do this career. It's a safe career. And I'm going to make some money. I'm going to have, I'm going to be able to get what I want. And so started the career. I realized I hated it. I was good at it, but I
Mhm.
hated it. I was going in my second year just dreading every moment that was going to happen that day. And I was like 19 at the time. I told myself, I can't make this the rest of my life. So I started the process of change where when I did that change, I wasn't worried about other people. I was looking at me. What was going to be my future 5 years, 10 years from now? It took me a realization of paying attention to me, really looking on the inside and then, of course, having many mentors guiding me along the way because you think you want something and you go for it and you reach it. Similar to how you're saying, like the corporate rat race, where we want that promotion. They have this, and we finally get to the top, and we're like, all right, we got to the top, but this is not making me any happier. I'm not fulfilled. I thought it was going to bring me some type of joy and some type of fulfillment. And when it comes to my life, what wakes me up in the morning is going to be personal to me, where it's like I want to make a difference in the world, not so much a difference just in my life. And that's one of the reasons why I left teaching was because, yes, I was making a difference in those students' lives, but that was one district where now I can work with people
Mm.
internationally all over the world. And I have a good client base of youth where I work with many teenagers, many young college students where they're finally getting into that realm of, okay, I'm going to go after something. And I just give them some wisdom on what they might be able to expect.
Yeah.
Because again, trial and error in certain areas is a good thing. If I just tell everyone, hey, you shouldn't go to college, you should just do this. Well, now they lost out all the experiences that they would have got for college. In college, I learned that drinking is bad. I learned that you have to do a bunch of papers, stay up all night, all nighters. I learned about procrastination. I mean, I learned a lot in college that maybe I wouldn't have learned about in the real world. So it was like a finding for me going
Mm.
to college and getting an education. And I think sometimes people tack on college with you need to do this. You don't necessarily need college, but college teaches you different things. And if you have a coach, they can teach you those different things too. Similar to how you say when you got your life coach, you were able to not see everything so tunnel vision. You had more options.
Yeah.
And I think options are a good thing when we decide to finally wake up. I have many options when I wake up in the morning. I can
Mm.
say, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that. How am I going to change the world today? And that's kind of like my driver. Like, how am I making an impact? And it doesn't matter if one person or 1 million people or 1 billion people listen, watch, support. As long as I create that ripple, that is what I'm looking for. And
Yeah.
what I wanted to get from you was kind of like, what type of fulfillment do you seek? What is your driver when you wake up in the morning? And I know you're going to say your kid, maybe, but do not say your kids because they weren't here when you decided to finally get your life in order. I have a young boy myself, and he's not my driver. I have to be the driver. I have to
Mm.
figure out the fulfillment before him. He is a factor. He is a factor. I will say
Yeah,
that,
of
but
course.
he's not the driver.
I know exactly what you mean. I love my kids, but I also love that they're at school and daycare right now and I can just like be me. I'm not a mum who's like always about my kids. I have fulfillment in so many different areas, and I have to say, with the whole why, it is so important. But I'm also a believer that I don't think we all have one purpose. The same way I don't believe that there's only one love of your life out there. And for me, I actually feel it's about understanding what really excites you. And it could be the smallest of things. I did recruitment for 10 years. It's not like I loved recruitment, but there were so many aspects of it, like connecting with people, talking with people, creating trainings, helping people. All of those aspects, they gave me fulfillment. And I actually think a lot of people are looking for the big picture in order to feel fulfilled. And it's all the tiny things you do in a day. So for me, it's everything. And I'm very lucky that my mindset is naturally someone who I tend to wake up very excited. If I know I can connect with someone, like if I'm having a coaching session, of course, then I'm jumping out of bed because I know I can connect with them. If I'm having an introduction call with a client, if I'm creating content, all of that stuff, it gives me fulfillment because I'm doing so many different varieties. But ultimately, it's all something that I'm really passionate about and I'm actually really interested in. So for me, learning more about confidence, about courage, about how I can be the best coach, connecting with people, helping people, but that's like the big picture. And then it's all the little things that go into making that happy, all those little things. That's what really gives me fulfillment. It's the variety, but it's all leading to this bigger picture.
I'm a big fan of like listening to personal development audiobooks, reading hard copies of books, just trying to make my life a little bit better every single day. Whether it's a YouTube video or, going to Barnes and Noble and picking up the latest Tony Robbins book, right? It doesn't necessarily matter how I get that motivation,
Mm.
that personal development type of material where it's like pushing me, saying, hey, think this way. And there's always a different way of thinking. Similar to how you said, like, there's just not one thing that makes you fulfilled. Similar in personal development, you're going to find different areas where you can make improvements. And it's always small improvements that you can make. And yes, you might be a billionaire and have all the riches, all the wealth. Maybe you have a wonderful family that loves you, but you are not at that point where you can't grow anymore.
Yeah.
There's not something that you can't learn or something that you can't gain because yes, you can lose a lot, but what can you gain, right?
Mm.
So what's there to learn? And I love reading personal development books from different authors because they always give you a different and unique perspective. And I love having coaches on because they offer a different, unique perspective that maybe I wouldn't have thought about. And now my audience says, wow, that's interesting. I didn't think of that either.
Yeah.
Because I always say when you're looking for a coach, find someone who's going to have a personality match with yourself where you can be open and you can trust them because that's that relationship where you want to be as intimate as possible with them with your deepest, darkest secrets and to understand that you're in a safe space
Mm.
because it could be difficult to tell someone your dreams, your aspirations, because you might have done it in the past. You might have said to someone, maybe your best friend, hey, I want to start my own business. Huh, poppycock, you can't do that. You should
Yeah.
just get a regular 9 to 5
Yeah.
like everyone else and then be happy. So people are dream killers in a sense, but when you work with a coach and you fill yourself with personal development material, it's going to give you that boost
Oh,
of, okay,
absolutely.
I can make that change.
Yeah.
I will make that change. I think it's important for people to have access to quality coaches, to quality help, quality material. If you had to say to someone and give them maybe a starting point, I know you talked about the chimp book earlier with the way
Mm.
of thinking. For me, it's Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. That's typically the book I recommend to people initially starting off. If they're younger and they're in high school, I would typically give them like a Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Mhm.
That's another good one. Just to change the way we think, personal development of growing your mind and to think a little bit differently than you typically would, to kind of give the audience a perspective of how you think or what direction you go in initially. What book would you say is a powerful first impact for a new client?
Yeah, so the book that I would recommend is Man's Search for Meaning. And this was actually written by someone who was in a German concentration camp. And it just shows you the power of the mind. It's a real classic book. I think it just shows you how much is all manifested in our own head. Because if you can be in a place, like a concentration camp and still come out of it and find meaning, wow. I mean, that I think for me, that just shows the power. It gives me goosebumps, really. It just shows the power that the mind has. And I think that's a great place to start, just to give you that shift and show you that you do actually have a lot more control than you think you do on what's happening around you.
And I believe the author is Viktor E. Frankl, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So anyone who's looking for Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor E. Frankl is a wonderful book. I've read it also. And it's interesting because you would think that someone in a situation like that would have a very pessimistic mind, but he was very open and he was very aware. I think aware is one of the main factors that you should look for in that book because he's able to pay attention and not simply hide away. And I think sometimes in our society, or in many people's lives, they choose to hide, they choose to run, they choose to not show up. But I believe that if you can be brave, if you can be courageous to make that leap of faith, you can start to change your whole entire life around. And
Yeah.
that can lead to more and better things in your life too.
And I think the word you use there, courageous, because it does take courage. As much as sometimes we might hate our situation, there's comfort in habit, there's comfort in patterns. And as much as you're saying logically, no, I want things to get better, I want to change, there's a part of you that actually doesn't. And I've noticed with some of my clients, they will cling to their stories, like it's like, no, they will defend it and defend it and defend it. And that's part of the role of a coach, to show them there is another way, because as much as they hate that story, it's all they've known, and there's comfort there. And it's recognizing, if you want to embark on a journey with a coach, it's going to get uncomfortable because you're going into the unknown. I was explaining that you have this foundation, like a concrete foundation, and you're the tree growing through it. And it's kind of a bit like sometimes getting a hammer and breaking up the foundation so you can create something better there. That means there's also uncertainty, and uncertainty is a bit scary. And that's why you want to do it with a coach, because that's someone who's there. They're going to hold your hands. They're going to make sure you're okay. But it does take courage. And sometimes I will say to my clients, what you're experiencing, it feels like fear, but it's the beginning of something really amazing.
Yeah, it's like a battle between your conscious and your unconscious, your subconscious thoughts,
Mm.
where it's like you want to get better. That's why you sought a coach. But then you have that comfort zone inside saying, hey, you're using too much energy. It's just kind of scary. I don't know if you really want to do this. So I'm just gonna help you out, and I'm just going to maybe not have you call your coach today, even though you should. And many people fall off there. But for the people who commit to it, is similar to how New Year's resolutions, people commit to that change. And again, you have to either have some type of awareness that you really truly want this and you're going to do everything you can in your power to get it, or you have to have a trauma. And I prefer people not have traumas before they
Yeah.
come to me, but the majority of my clients, they do have some type of trauma. Typically, the teens don't have traumas yet. It's just that parents see the path that their child is going on, and they want to mitigate as much harm to that young mind and body, whatever.
And I was going to say, and it's such a shame because it is a pattern that we will push ourselves to the point of pain before we make a change. I was working with a client and she really wanted to leave her job. And she was like, oh, it would almost just be easier if I'd burn out because then I'd be forced to leave. And I was like, do you hear what you're saying? Because it's kind of so scary to make the decision your own. We often wait until it's not our decision because you've experienced a trauma, because you're in pain. The choice is no longer yours. Now you're being forced to do something about it. And for a lot of us, we wait until that point, and then, it is harder rather than catching it before the trauma happens. And hopefully then the path is a bit easier. But then it's more your decision than you're making the decision. And often we just want someone else to make the decision for us.
And that's a wonderful point you made there. Sometimes I have clients say, Michael, just tell me what to do. And I say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to guide you the way that you need to be guided, because your path is different than my path. I've spoken about this on the podcast. If you do exactly what I did and you follow in my footsteps, you will not find happiness. You need to find your own happiness. You need to find your own destination, your own desired place. Sometimes people want the easy part. They want everything given to them. So there's like, this, give me what you got, and then whatever it is, I'll be happy. But again, just because you think happiness is at some destined place, you will be really awakened to realize that happiness is not a destination. It's a state of mind. And I know what a life coach does. And I know especially what a mindset coach does is we help you with the way you're thinking. And then that also correlates into how your life forms, and then everything else that comes into your life. It's not about scarcity. It's not about your comfort zone. It's about your growth zone, right? Being in a growth state of mind, living a life that you can be happy that you live, rather than a life that you dread waking up every single day and having to go to work, or waiting for Friday, or on the weekend going out and drinking to cover up all the pains and the sorrows. There's so much more to life than those moments where you're in your bed and you can't go to sleep, or you're in your bed and you can't wake up. You should be able to wake up and be so excited to go in your day and to do all these wonderful things. And you should be excited to go to sleep because you have done a wonderful job in your day,
Mm.
and be excited for tomorrow because of all the glorious things that you're going to do. That way of thinking is powerful.
That's, I mean, beautiful, right? When I hear you say that, it's like, wow. And our life, it's gone in a fleeting moment. We think we have so much time. We don't. It's gone before you know it. And so many of us are waiting. Like I always say, the stage is set and we're all waiting. We're waiting on the side. What are you waiting for? Like it's happening now. And no one's going to remember most of us. What are we so scared about? Just go and seize the day, as they say.
Yeah, you're right. Time is fleeting. And just like our time in this episode, it's like it has already flew by. And I know episodes are so short and people might want more, but what I want is for people to get a taste of what you do, a taste of your mindset, and then so they can really dive into your coaching experience and your program so they can begin to make changes in their life. So if I can from you, Alice, please share with people how they can find you and then any last words.
Absolutely. So I do most of my connecting on LinkedIn. So you can just find me and maybe we can put a link
Of
on your
course.
podcast, but it's just Alice Graves. And then my website is alicegraves.com. So you can find me in both of those places and you can sign up for my newsletter. That's a great way to stay in contact if I have new courses coming out or any promotions coming along. But those are really the places to connect. So if you like what I've said, I would say go to my LinkedIn page, connect with me. You can drop me a DM. And I'd say for anyone listening, it can take a long time to get to the point where you're ready to make that change. But the change, it can happen so quickly. So don't worry if you haven't got there yet. This is all part of the process. Just listening to these podcasts, it can take a while, to get to the point where you think, okay, now I'm ready. And if you feel ready, just do it. There's nothing to be scared of. It can start with a very simple conversation, but just know that time, it's passing very quickly. No one's waiting for you. No one's coming in to save you. You've got to do it yourself. And life can be so amazing. And really, as we've spoken about today, so much of it, we control it. We just need to be taught a little bit like how to tweak this or how to think about that. And yeah, I would say just go for it.
I love it. Yes, you're right. We have to be our own superheroes in that, right? Where we are the people that make the changes for our life. And we can begin by ourselves doing personal development books, but that's a lot of trial and error. It takes a lot more time. I always recommend getting someone on your side, on your team to be your coach, your mentor, your biggest cheerleader. And I know Alice Graves is going to be a wonderful asset in your corner. I want to thank you so much, Alice, for coming on Coaching in Sessions and having a conversation with me about the work you do and how you help people.
Oh, well, thank you. I've loved the conversation. So thank you for having me on your show.
Everyone, Alice Graves.